Okay everyone, this is our immune system catch up. We've got quite a lot to get through, so go get yourself a cup of tea, go get yourself your notepads and everything and your pens, and get ready to keep pausing me because I'm going to go relatively fast. And this is an important one. Not that they're all not important, of course they are, but you know what I'm talking about. So our immunity is about the harmony within our ever-changing environment. Our immunity should adjust and it should flow accordingly. If you think of it the way that nature adjusts and shifts and flows, it's never static, and our immunity should work like that. It should flow and adjust accordingly to our environment. And I think it's interesting that when we go back to our earlier studies and we talk about the unity between us and nature and the universe, and if you think that the word unity is within the word immunity, I kind of like that. I think it's quite an important, it feels like an important thing to notice. Basically, because we are as one, and so we should move and flow accordingly with nature, as one with nature. And we don't, let's face it, do we? Right, okay, enough waffling. So the lymphatic fluids are intimately connected with the immune system, in that they're almost a filter for our immunity. So we're going to be doing the immune system, and we're going to be doing lymphatics as well, all in one thing. Again, in this organ system, plants can do so much more than our modern day drugs. Minnie, I'm not eating, go sit down. Go sit down, come on, let's go to bed. Come on, come on. Come on, go to bed. Go to bed, come on, in your basket. Come on, come on. Bed, 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 bed. Come on, come on, come on. Well done. Very good. Lie down now. No one's eating. There's no biscuits to go with the tea. None. Yep, so plants can offer a great deal more than drugs in this organ system. For example, there's no drug, to my knowledge, there's no drug to boost immunity. Not to my knowledge, there isn't. Or neither is there a drug to cleanse the lymphatic system, for example. Antibiotics kill everything, what remains then is the debris and the metabolic waste that's all just left over. Whereas plants shift the physiological states. They shift the physiological states, which drugs can't really do. The plants shift the ecological state of the terrain. So the terrain, the entirety of the body, seeing it as a landscape. In fact, that's a good thing to do today. Seeing it as a land, as terrain, what a plant will do is shift the ecological state of that entire terrain, which in turn makes it inhospitable to bacteria, inhospitable to pathogens, inhospitable to disease. it changes the state of the tissue just as we would change the state of our soil. Yeah, so if you're growing something, you've got poor soil, you need blah blah blah. A plant changes the terrain just as we would change the state of the soil. I hope that makes sense. Right, lymphatics and immunity work together to create the body's primary defense system. These are the cells and tissues of the body that are responsible for monitoring the entire organism, the entire terrain. This permeates and affects everything. It's distributed throughout the body, completely affecting absolutely everything. Yeah, distributed all the way, all across the land, all the way through the body. It's distributed and it affects everything. So think of it like the immune system. Bear with. The immune system is like the warriors going off to fight, and the lymphatics are like the cleanup crew that goes in afterwards, cleaning the system out and enabling it to function correctly afterwards. So cleaning up a battlefield. Yeah? It's going to be really fun today. So let's talk about the immune system first. Let's talk about the immune system first, okay? This functional system is compromised with many different types of cells. As always, we're going to simplify it, okay? So bear with. The two primary aspects of the immune system are innate defences and adaptive defences. Innate defences helps if I can say it. Innate defences and adaptive defences. Yeah? Innate defences. Let's do that first. These are surface barriers protecting the body from invading pathogens. Yeah? So, for example, surface barriers, what are we talking about? Skin, yeah, mucosal membrane. So remembering that the mucosal membrane covers organ systems that are open to the outside. So where are the mucosal membranes? The mucosal membrane is the respiratory system, again, open to the outside. The urinary system, urinary tract, open to the outside, and the digestive system open to the outside, yeah, all the way through. Got it? Good. Right. Adaptive defences, yeah. Specific types of immunological cells that destroy bacteria. So these are adaptive. They change to address a situation, yeah? For example, inflammation, fever, you get it. They change accordingly. These are broken down yet further into non-specific and specific immunity. Non-specific and specific. Innate defences, adaptive defences. Non-specific, specific. Cool. Right, let's look at the innate defences a little bit more. So innate defences, this is non-specific immunity, okay? Non-specific. Right, okay, mucosal membrane and the skin, yeah? Think of the mucosal membrane as a moat around a castle, okay? Secreting thin membrane full of immunoresponses. So it is, this moat around the castle is like the first line of defence, yeah? Right, now let's go into a few cells. So we've got, I'm going to say the names wrong, probably, or I'm going to forget some names, quite probably, or I'm not going to be able to read my writing. So bear with, because I'm just giving you an outline here. So we've got phagocytes, right, okay. So cell eaters. Cell eaters, non-specific. Think of them as general infantry. It's all getting very, it's all getting very military. It's going to be a very military based day. So they're like Pac-Man, yeah. So they're going around patrolling, general immune system on patrol, eating, yeah. And it is crucial that these cells know the difference between self and non-self. Yeah? All right. Good. What I want you to think about from this point, make a note in the margin somewhere, is that any autoimmune disease, and there's many, theoretically is the misunderstanding or the misinterpretation between self and non-self cells. Okay, right. So phagocytes derive from the white blood cells and distribute to destroy foreign pathogens. Yeah, they engulf and break it apart. They mob it, the pathogen, and just kill it. Yep, cool. Neutrophils are the most common white blood cells. They destroy pathogens, but destroy themselves in the same process. So they are suicide bombers. Sorry. Oh dear. It's not funny. Okay. Macrophages, these don't kill themselves. And then we've got NK cells, which are natural killer cells, right? Lymphocytes. So more, they move through the blood and the lymph, constantly searching for pathogens. They have a sensing mechanism which triggers the pathogen to self-destruct. It's all fascinating and really complicated, and by the end of it, you're like, if you haven't already thought that the human body is an absolute miracle, then it's like, whoa. Okay, so they've got this sensing mechanism and they trigger the pathogen to self-destruct. They secrete, how this happens is loosely, they secrete an inflammatory chemical, which then triggers increased circulation, dilation of the blood vessels, pain, heat, stimulation of the immune system, it surrounds the pathogen in effect, and it traps it, and it, boom, self-destructs. So they're if you like, they are a messenger cell. They search out and they call in all these different chemical aspects that then encases the pathogen, and boom, gone. Yeah. They trigger the cell's natural destruct response. If you can see what's happening there, the area, what they're doing is they're going out, they're searching. There's one over here, somebody blows a whistle, you get where I'm going, blows a whistle, sends a flare up, whatever, yeah, and what's happening is that area is being made inhospitable by the inflammation, the chemical response, the dilation of blood vessels, that heat instantly is just doof straight there to, it's creating that inhospitable area instantly, you know, boom, there. So they trigger the cell's natural destruct response only. So these are, we're talking about invading pathogens, yeah? So something without our DNA, non-self cells without our DNA. That's what they destroy, yeah? Let's look at some more of these effects. So inflammation. Inflammation is a needed response. It's a needed response to injury, or it's a needed response to pathogen, yeah? And there are 4 cardinal signs of inflammation, and they are heat, swelling, redness, pain, yeah? The process of inflammation is important to know. Okay, so first we've got this, we start with this chemical alarm, yeah? So from this chemical alarm, we've got extracellular fluid of the immune system floods the area with chemical compounds such as histamine, yep. They signal more white blood cells to come to the area. The blood vessels then dilate and open to deliver, yeah. We then see an increase in permeability so that the fluids and the cells can cross over the barrier more easily. The immune system crosses the tissue barrier, yeah. And this is why we see redness with inflammation, because we've got that blood flow crossing over. Okay. We can see then swelling as well, because basically what's happening is the area is becoming protective. More fluids passing into the area of damage or the area of infection, surrounding it to preserve it. So for example, if you've sprained your wrist or something and it swells up, then that's a good thing because it stops you from moving your arm around and creating even more damage. It's the body creating a protective response. We don't see it like that at all, do we? Increased blood flow also increases heat due to increased oxidation. Clotting will be brought to the area of a cut, for example. Capillaries open up and then bring antibodies. Swelling around the cut area, let's say we're looking at a cut, then presses on nerve endings, which then creates the pain that we get with a cut, yeah? Right, steroids. Steroids turn the switch off at the root. That's quite important to know as well. So non-steroids turn off the pain response when the chemicals race to the area. So as these chemicals in this inflammation response, as the chemicals rush and flood that area, that's an intense amount of activity going on in one area, yeah, of inflammation, as the inflammation builds up and everything stacks up into that area. If you can imagine it, like everyone rushing over into an area, it expands, and that's what creates pain, yeah, with the chemicals rushing into the area to be protective, yeah. Non-steroids turn off the pain response, yeah, but steroids turn off the switch to inflammation at the root. Okay, I'm just going to leave that there. Right, clotting and the protection process. So this walls off the infected area so that it can't travel elsewhere. So isolating the injured area. Yeah, so cut, walls it off so that there's no infection going any further. When we go through inflammation, there's a great amount of metabolic waste products that are generated. And to follow this, there's various processes of cleanup. tissues broken down, white blood cells dying off. It is like a battleground, yeah. But the phagocytes come. They come in and they sweep up. You can see it like sweeping up a battlefield. You know where I'm going with it. It's that big, huge cleanup afterwards. With long-term inflammation, we can see pus as well, which is basically a mixture of dead white blood cells, nice, cellular debris as well. So a pus-filled wound generally depicts that there wasn't enough immunity to deal with the infection. You see how that works? Because if there was enough immunity, it would have closed it off, sorted it out, swept it all away, healed. There we go. I don't know why we're doing a sort of Dad's Army kind of voice on it. So when we've got that pus, we've got basically what we've got is debris because there wasn't enough immunity to deal with the injury. Yeah. Ideally, we want the pus to escape, cleanse, drain. This becomes, if not, this tends to become an abscess. Yeah, that's kind of where we're going with that. This is where traditionally echinacea would have been used for that deep, that's a deep infection, yeah. Right, moving on to antimicrobial proteins. Antimicrobial proteins directionally, so what we're looking at is we're looking at interferons here. So directionally attack pathogens or stop them from reproducing is more accurately put. So interferon, they interfere, yeah? They interfere with the virus's ability to reproduce. That's basically what's going on there. They also increase more killer cells, NK cells. There's over 20 relevant proteins in this process. I'm not going into them. And this is all non-specific immunity. This is all this is just in the non-specific immunity, and this is really, really simplified into military terms. So a virus do we all know how a virus works? A virus infiltrates our cells and uses our own DNA to reproduce itself. Okay? That's how that works. Now, I want to talk a little bit about fever. And then I'm going to talk a bit about it now. I'm going to go back to it afterwards as well. So fever, super important component of immunity. Fever is often seen as the enemy, but if you look at it from the angle of the vital forces and vitality, how we started the course, it is an intelligent response. The pathogen invades. The immunity cannot respond effectively. It contacts the hypothalamus, yeah, just bear with, which heats up, closes pores, and then cooks out the pathogen, yeah. So it's the body's it is an intelligent response. It is not an enemy. It's an intelligent response. We'll go through the stages of fever. Right, the immune system can read the pathogen's cook rate. Now, I think that's mind-blowing. So the pathogen, naughty little alien floating around, yeah, your immune system can actually read what the cook rate is of that invading pathogen. So it knows the cook rate. It tells the hypothalamus to reset the body's normal. So the body's normal temperature, yeah, it tells it to reset. So you feel, obviously, if your temperature, if your normal temperature is, let's say your normal temperature, and everyone's different, let's say your normal temperature is 98, and let's say the immune system knows that that pathogen will die at 102. It will report that information up to headquarters at the hypothalamus, who will then reset the body's temperature, the normal temperature, to 102. So the first signs of a fever, you feel cold. Because you're at 98, you're not at 102 yet. Yeah? So that's when you feel chilly. There's actual, to touch, there's no signs of a fever yet. Yeah. That is the first stage. Stage 2, the temperature rises. Now you start to feel hot. Yep. Now your body will cook out the pathogen. If you reduce the fever at that point, you suppress that vital force. You give the pathogen license then to reproduce. And in fact, you give that pathogen license to further infect the body. So that reproduction going quite quickly from that point. So short term you'd feel a bit better, but long term you're going to feel loads worse. During acute infection, the white blood cells excrete chemicals called pyrogens. This signals the hypothalamus to close the pores on skin and to increase the temperature to cook out and kill the invading infection. Clever, no? The liver, gallbladder call in zinc and iron in order to stave off the pathogen from having the ability to reproduce, because the pathogen requires nutrients and it will use the body's reserve of nutrients. So the organs know exactly what they're doing. The organs pull in these nutrients from the muscles and the outer extremities. They call in these nutrients. Seriously, how clever is this? So zinc is critical aspect of our immune system. During fever, all blood circulation is at the skin surface. This is why we fast during a fever. And this is why there's an old saying, fast a fever, feed a cold. That's why. If you eat during a fever, you're then calling all of that blood from the surface back into the gut. So you're interrupting that process. That's not good. Now we're going to come back to fever. We'll come back to fever afterwards. Let's carry on with what I'm doing now. So let's look at specific immunity. So we've done non-specific immunity. Let's do specific immunity, or adaptive defenses. Yeah, they adapt. So the main difference is that this has memory. It can remember what, we're about to get way more clever. So it can remember what has attacked the body. It has a memory bank where it can store specific antibodies to react to specific pathogens. So if that pathogen gets into the body again, it can take care of it. Okay? Specific immunity is also systemic as well. So it's not limited to the initial infection site. So if the initial infection site is, oh, I don't know, your arm or something, it has that knowledge throughout the entire system of the body, not just in that area. Right, so specific, going to get a bit more complicated. Specific immunity has two branches. Humoral antibody immunity, yeah, cellular immunity. Okay, so antibody immunity, humoral antibody immunity. So antibodies, it helps if I can read the writing. Circulatory, circulating through the fluids of the body, like scouts on patrol. If they find something, they flag it, send the message to the rest of the system. They don't kill it. Okay, cool, put that there. Cellular immunity, a further two branches. B cells, T cells. We've all heard of B cells and T cells. Cool. I'm supposed to be following a numbered system here, and I've gone way off track. So, humoral antibody immunity, cellular immunity, yeah? All under the heading specific immunity. They're specific because they go to immunity training school. Bear with. So, the immunity training school, yeah, is the thymus, okay, and the bone marrow. Two schools. Technically, there's two schools. Okay. This is where the cells learn what they're supposed to do. So they learn the difference between self and non-self. Now, if you've got an autoimmune disease, just about now your mind is starting to unravel and explode, because you're making little notes in all your margins, which I've been doing for the past 20 years, figuring out where this goes wrong. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. So specific immunity, two branches: humoral antibody immunity, cellular immunity. We've got two schools: thymus and bone marrow. Okay, right. Cellular immunity, two branches. Narrowing it down, guys. B cells, T cells. Okay, so main aspects of antibodies located in the immune school develop, this is the B cells, B for bone marrow. Nice and easy to remember, okay? B cells, bone marrow. B cells go to bone marrow school, okay? They're taught to recognise one antigen. An antigen is any substance that initiates a neurological response. Okay? So any substance that initiates a neurological response is an antigen. So that's when the body reads something which is foreign and initiates an immunological response, something which generates antibodies. Yeah? Got it. Right. So, B cells in the bone marrow school, they're taught to recognise one, think about that, one antigen specifically. So you could say that over here in the humoral antibody immunity, we've got scouts on patrol that just flag things. In the B cells, we've got special forces. Okay, special forces. They have one mission, just one mission. Cool. The B cells what happens is the B cell binds to an antigen, to a particular antigen, yeah, then sends out a signal to produce more B cells, more antibodies to fight that particular pathogen. That's how the B cell works. Right. Cool. Can we see that the whole premise of a vaccine is based around this, how the body is working here? Yeah, I hope so. So what we've also got with B cells, we've got plasma B cells and memory B cells. They're created at something ridiculous, like, I don't know the figures for this, but it's something really nuts, like 2,000 a second or something. I can't remember it, so don't ask. But and the second infection rate is faster. It's crazy, and you just think, you read about it. I remember reading about it. It's not in my book. My book's it's so scribbly, but I remember reading stuff on this and thinking, what? It is crazy. Okay, let's carry on. You've got APT cells, which flag and quarantine cells as well. Flag and quarantine. And then we've got our T cells, two categories. We've got helpers, which stimulate growth. So they're like task masters, yeah. And then you've got cytotoxics as well, which directly destroy, and they tend to be linked to specific viral pathogens. So T cells, what we're looking at with a T cell is we're looking at an assassin. So you've got your special forces, you've got your guys on patrol, and you've got assassins, yeah? T cells are assassins. T cells go to immune training school in the thymus, T, thymus, yeah. B cells, bone marrow, T cells, thymus, T. Assassin, killers, snipers, whatever you want to call them, super specific in their roles, and they come to maturity. They graduate from the thymus. Right. Okay. I am kind of militaried out on this. Please, goodness to never. And I was so excited earlier because I thought that was the end, but I missed it. It's not the end at all. Okay. I think at this point it is really interesting to note the heart centre. Last time we spoke in class, we spoke about the heart centre points and our ability to merge and connect empathically with our clients, with our clients. So this heart centre, we were talking about this heart centre that radiates out the soul self, yeah, the soul self. And the thymus, the thymus here, for anyone, thymus is there in your soul area. It is in your heart space, yeah. The thymus, the T cells learn to understand self and non-self in this area. I think that's really interesting. And again, if you've got an autoimmune disease, or you work with a lot of people with autoimmune diseases, your cell, the T cells, the snipers, learn what they're doing. They learn the difference between self and non-self here in your heart space. So what's gone wrong in that interpretation? Sorry, I get fascinated with that. Right, okay, so just for the record, only 2% of these cells pass. They graduate. The rest of them fail and they self-destruct. They should self-destruct. The ones that pass enter the immune system and off they go, doing their jobs. And this is why the thymus is most active in childhood, when our immunity is learning and it's growing, it's being educated, yeah. From puberty, the thymus begins to atrophy. It's considered an endocrine gland. It secretes hormones, but it's also immuno-related. Yep, remember that. Bone marrow is similar for B cells. Once passed and tested, they're stored in the lymphatic tissue. Cool. They go to school, they graduate, and then they're on patrol in the lymph system, waiting to detect pathogens. That's how it all should work. Okay. Let's look at the lymphatic system. Okay, put that to one side. Lymph system. So, lymphatic system, channels, pathways, vessels, nodes, spleen, lymph tissue. It's important, we know why it's important, but important because they store immunity and they clean up after illness. Yeah, so these channels, pathways, vessels, when the lymph nodes swell, they are basically, what's happening is it's a congested area. It's congested with metabolic waste. So where these nodes are, these swollen nodes, it's becoming congested. There's no flow and cleansing movements. So these channels, pathways, vessels flow through arteries, capillaries into the fluid matrix, extracellular fluids. As it cleans up waste in this area, the lymph then clears this out. The lymph does not have a pump or circulation. It requires movement to encourage it to flow. The fluid that is dumped, for want of a better word, is picked up by the lymphatic system, cleaned and put back into the blood. It's a very complex, elaborate drainage system of lymph fluids. All lymphatic vessels move towards the heart. So, for example, when we work with vibrational therapy and we work with increasing the lymphatic movements, and if we work with, especially if we work with tuning forks and that kind of vibrational sound therapy, when we work to move the lymphatic system, that's why we move to the heart, always move to the heart. The movements of the diaphragm moves the lymph. The lymph tissues this is constantly under surveillance with filters at the nodes. It almost acts like cities full of lymph tissue cells. That's it, you've got this surveillance around it. It's almost this surveillance, like a city, a hub full of this lymphatic tissue and lymphatic cells. For example, the tonsils, lymph tissue rich. Think about where the tonsils are. Yeah, when we talked about the respiratory system. The gut is full of lymph nodes, lymph tissue rich. Yeah. Again, it's where what we're looking at there is what you would expect when you look at this miraculous system that we exist within. You're looking at these areas where the outside world comes inside. So you would expect it to be this surveillance, constant surveillance, rich in this this protective tissue. Yeah. Lymph fluid gets congested, nodes then swell. That's why when we're looking at the lymph nodes, we did this with digestion when we went through the digestive system. when we're looking at nodes in the digestive system, this is why we get bloating. Yeah. Lymph is present in main passageways, so lymphatic tissue, lymphatic cells, lymphatic fluids, present in main passageways. Passageways, good way of thinking about it. Spleen is like the headquarters for the lymph system. It's not a channel of elimination, but it is attached to cleansing, detoxification of blood and lymph fluids. Yeah. The immune system, lymph system, it's all pretty remarkable, to be honest, the way it all works together. So let's look at some tissue states. Cool. Right. Okay. Important to remember. The immune system, our immunity, is directly attached to vitality. So looking at what is either deficient or excess is really important. Yeah, deficiency and excess is really important. So immunodeficient would be someone who's always sick. Low vitality, very pale skin maybe, swollen lymph glands, poor wound healing. You might expect this person to have a poor diet, high stress, no sleep. These are all things that tip the scales to deficient or very low immunity. In this case, we'd be looking very much at a damp, cold, depression, stagnation. Right, immuno-excess. Okay, so immuno-excess, immunity in excess. So overly sensitive, hyperallergic, autoimmune diseases. If the immune system is hyperactive, we have excess inflammation. So too much fire. What we're looking at is heat excitation. In this case, with heat excitation, and you've got this autoimmunity, this hypersensitivity, this hyperreactivity, then a critical medicine to use is the immune trophorrestoratives. So heat excitation, you've got, what you're probably looking at in this situation is systemic inflammation throughout, which is going to present as heat, pain, redness, musculoskeletal problems, musculoskeletal membranes inflamed, inflammation of membranes, sensitive. What you're looking at is the sensitivity then turns into a wearing down of the tissue. Yeah. So the wearing down of the tissue, because you've got that too much heat and inflammation all the time, is going to wear down that tissue. So we can often relate this back to food. So the lymphatic is in excess and wears down, it clogs up. So it leaves a lot of toxic waste then, and the toxic waste builds up. You see where that's going? I hope that's obvious between the deficient and the excess, yeah? The problems that relate to both. So let's talk a little bit about plants. So rose family plants, excellent for this, typically because we have a cooling effect. Beech leaf, yarrow, major remedy for immunity. elderberry, elderflower, lemon balm, bee balm. Okay, right, cold depression. So if we're looking at a cold depression tissue state, cold depression tissue state is a precursor for anything that's cancerous, really. Cold depression. So what we're looking at is a deficiency in immunity, a pattern of weak, cold, worn down, sluggish, lowered metabolism, a tendency to stagnation, an increase in chronic infection, cellular function is depressed, systemic infection as well. So infections of the mouth, of the throat, of the wherever. Yeah, urinary tract. Yeah, systemic all the way through. Infection. Cells are slowing down and things are getting really stuck. Cold depression. Yeah. So we're looking at swollen lymph inflammation. Blue, purple on the tongue, skin, also blues and purpley kind of hues to the skin, blood stagnation, representative of looking at a pulse that's really quite slow and deep and low and hard to feel almost. Again, cold and depressed, yeah. Everyone gets where that tissue state is, yeah. Yeah. And here we want to, obviously, we want to be using a warm, we want to warm up that constitution, because that is a systemic reaction there. It's in the entirety is cold and depressed. So we want to warm up the constitution first, yeah. So bring in that vitality back, that little bit of inertia back. Pungent, warming, increasing circulation. That's the kind of plants we're looking at. Fennel, ashwagandha, ginger, prickly ash, thyme, cinnamon, oil-rich carminatives, rosemary. Echinacea is an immune stimulant, but it's cooling, so you have to be aware of that because you're looking at cold depression there. This is why we need to know this, so that we just, because obviously you mentioned the word immunity and you go, echinacea. Yeah, echinacea is cooling, it's cold. So be aware of it. Used for immunodepression and circulatory depression, very much echinacea, but just be aware of that cooling. Calendula is warming. Right, dry atrophy. Let's look at dry atrophy. Dry atrophy, remember that dry atrophy can also cause stagnation. So what we're looking at is the lymphatic fluids. They need to be moist and moving. That's how they work. So typically, dryness in mucous membranes, dryness in the skin also as well, weakness, low appetite, a lot of thirst, dry atrophy, yeah, you would expect it. When we say that this dry atrophy can also cause stagnation, because the dry, if something's very dry, that we don't have that moistness and fluidity. I hope that makes sense. So nodes, fluids become dry, they become swollen. Therefore, that can lead to, you see how one thing can go to another here with the tissue states. So you're looking at pleurisy root, moistening for the entire system. Solomon seal, burdock, especially post-infection with burdock. Linden, astragalus. Never give astragalus when someone's sick. Not when they're actually sick. Cleavers, clove, violet, marshmallow, moistening, yeah? Damp stagnation, right. Now, damp stagnation, common with lymph due to fluid without a pump. This is fluid that needs to move, it has no pump. So it is prone to stagnation, right. When immune system is working, what we get is when the immune system is working really hard due to infection, so it's working overtime due to infection, and the metabolic waste becomes too much and gets stuck, we get that lymphatic swelling. So we feel dull, heavy, frequent infections, one after the other, really lethargic, dull, heavy. And that is that lymphatic swelling due to that. It's if the lymph system's been working overtime, constantly. So it becomes too much. There's too much to clear. It's too much to do. It collapses almost. And what you should ask is, or what you should ask yourself is, did this terrain create or allow the infection? Yeah. Or did the infection create the tissue state, the terrain? Do you see where I'm going with that? It's a bit like a chicken and an egg. Because has the repeated infection created this terrain that is damp and stagnant? Or was the terrain already damp and stagnant, which is why we've got the infection? That's kind of something that you have to. That's a difficult one to work out. There's only way of working through it is working through with your clients and trying to process that. So here what we're looking at, damp stagnation, the whole tissue state is toxic. So we use alternatives to move that stagnation. So bitter, draining, drying, circulatory stimulants to get things moving. We are addressing the stagnation of that fluid. Dandelion leaf root, great. Lymphagogues in general, red roots, calendula, cleavers, figwort, your lymphagogues in general, draining, drying, circulatory stimulants. Cool. Damp relaxation. Right, okay, so what we're looking at here is the ability of the lymph tissue to be able to move. So if everything is slack, you know when we talked about venous congestion and how there is a difference between a circulatory stimulant to move, get things moving with the blood, and the difference being if the venous system is to relax. So there's no point pushing it through there because it's just going to pool and fill and it's never going to move until you get that tone back. Okay, so you're looking at the same kind of thing. If everything's slack, it becomes hard to move. Yeah. And this, I'm not saying this is not complicated. Yes, it is. And again, I'm going to go back to what we talk about in class. It's like driving a car. If somebody told you all this, or everything, somebody actually gave you a lecture on how to drive a car with no pictures and just taught it you with a great big book, you'd be thinking, forget that, I don't want to do that then. Because, you know what? It would sound incredible if you broke every process down of how the car works as well and how you interact with it, what you have to put in it for it to work, then it would seem impossible. However, you all do it, right? So stick with, take heart from that. So damp stagnation, this will look like damp stagnation. So damp relaxation can look like damp stagnation for obvious reasons, yeah? Because what we're looking at here is damp stagnation is because there's too much fluid, in a nutshell. And damp relaxation is because the tissues are too slack and the fluid is leaking into the body. You see how they're different? Yeah. So what we've been looking at using bayberry, sage. Absolutely, sage. So what we're looking at is pungent, warming, astringent toning. We want to bring that tone back so that things stay where they're supposed to. So that lymphatic fluid is going to stay where it's not going to leak. It's going to be where it's supposed to be, and it's going to then it's going to start to move. Yeah, oak bark as well is another one. Right, moving on. Wind tension. Right, wind tension. So when we have long-term stagnation, yeah, we can see almost like a lymph spasm. And this is when the lymph is moving waste, it's almost like a spasm and it just dumps. It's making the lymph sound really, really ineffective. But instead of moving the waste along, it's almost like it goes into if there's been this long-term stagnation, it collects up some waste and it's moving it along, and then all of a sudden it just thinks, and you know, I can't move that actually at all, and dumps it in the blood. And it's almost like this big spasm of dump, and it dumps that waste product is dumped into the blood. That is quite a bad way of saying it, but you get my drift. So what would be something that would represent that? What could we be looking for? We would be looking for a lot of fever, pain, tension, yeah, that kind of thing. Also the shivering. Shivering in the liver. It's almost like this. It's this shivering. Is this sort of wind. It's that liver constriction of the liver. Yeah. So it's got this. We are literally dumping off waste, dumping it. We'd be looking at relaxant diaphragmatics, because again, that everything that's going through a detoxifying process and clearing waste is becoming, it's gone into this spasm and tense and tight. So we're looking at relaxant diaphragmatics. So chamomile, lobelia, elderflower, relaxant diaphragm. So we want to relax that immediately. We want to start to relax that tension before we have to address the other matters. Yeah. Right. Okay. It's all right for you. You can keep pausing me. I can't pause. Okay. Carry on. Ready? Let's look at some evaluation stuff when we're looking at some evaluation criteria, looking at people. Minnie, please sit down. And this is about being observant. Don't you dare knock that camera, Min. So it's about being observant, right, as is all of it, but okay, cool. So bubbles of saliva on the edges of the tongue, yeah, indicates damp tissue state. It's just a little clue. Red dots on the tongue indicate overstimulated immunity, right? So you could be looking at continuous infection. So it would be indicated by heat. Yep. Sunken under the eyes, bluey black, very much representative of endocrine burnout, and typically what follows is low immunity. Minnie, go and lie down, please. Come lie down. So when we're looking at someone and we're working with someone, we are, number one, we are looking at how the immune system is being triggered. Where in the body is it manifesting? Yeah, how is it being triggered? Where is it manifesting? Yeah. Number two, what's the constitution? Number three, what's the environment of the tissue state? Yeah. Yes. this is a bit more vague than the other systems that we've got to go on. And we're looking more at the whole person, because we don't actually have an organ exactly to look at. We're looking at where that entire system, which is moving throughout the entirety of our body, where is it manifesting, rather than an organ as such. Yeah. So where is it presenting? Is it throat? Is it fever? Is it tummy? Is it, yeah, you get where I'm going with it. Where is it presenting? Okay. And I know we've done organ systems where we've got about 6 pages written on that, and with the immune system, it is one of the most complex things to know about. And yes, it's like, yeah, that's all you've got to go on. Wow. Okay, great. Super. Off we go. Energetics. Let's cover some energetics. So the main thing we must look at is the realization of self and non-self. Really, really, really important here. Obviously, for obvious reasons. The differentiation between the two is primary, and it is vital, obviously. This breakdown in information is what we see with autoimmune diseases. That is basically in variations, and if you look at all the varying wonderful, rare and particularly elaborate autoimmune diseases, that is pretty much what's happening. It's the distinguishing factor between self and non-self. So this is something that is reflected in our abilities as healers, as sensitive people, as empaths, to find the balance within this gift to sense the energy of others. As a healer, we should have boundaries but not walls. So when we spoke last time, and I'm hoping everyone watches the videos kind of in order, I think it was last time, we spoke about seeing clients, and we spoke about this heart center and this knowing your own energy. And we did a little bit of exercise, actually. A little bit of exercise was in session 11. If anyone hasn't done the little exercise, it's a really useful exercise on sitting in the seat of the soul, and it gets you to be familiar with your own energy field. And you would be I think you'd be quite shocked how many people are not familiar with the boundaries between their own energy field and someone else's energy field. So it's kind of looking at the same thing, and I'm intrigued by that. You see, that intrigues me, because it's like, so we're looking at the same thing there, and we're looking at the same thing with all these, we're going right down on a cellular immunity level, and we're looking at a really similar problem here. Same, it's different, but it's the same. Yeah. So as healers, we should have boundaries, clear boundaries, but we shouldn't have walls. So I think a good way that one of my teachers spoke about this is that walls crumble, whereas boundaries are flexible. Boundaries can move in and out, or rather in and out. Yeah. So allowing information in, or closing and becoming tight into our own energy. So just like this, our immune system has these boundaries. The skin, the mucous membranes, these are all the boundaries of the immune system. And this identification of self and non-self is associated with the thymus being the heart space. The heart space is our soul self. Who are we? So for, it's who we are. It's our actual soul self. It's who we are. It's not our flesh and blood. It's our soul self. So if for that to falter, to me, that is key. For that awareness of self and non-self to falter, to be faulty, is key. What it shows us is key to our understanding. If you think of childhood and the thymus learning the difference between self and non-self, the process of schooling these cells of immunity, what then are the implications of, for example, I'm going to be a little bit controversial now, but I like to think about the discussion of this. It's good to discuss things. Don't be afraid to discuss things. We're not bloody changing any laws. We're discussing it, yeah? Because that is an interesting point. That is a really interesting point. If you're not interested by that, you go back and watch it all again and listen again, because that is really fascinating. So, especially if you've got an autoimmune disease, at the minute you should be thinking, oh my goodness. Right, okay, so what are the implications then? If we go back to childhood and we go back to that thymus learning the difference between self and non-self and the process of schooling these cells of immunity, then what is the implication at that stage of antibiotics? Because it storms in and it destroys cells which are learning, yeah? And it destroys them before they get chance to learn. So turning off a fever response, but also killing everything as well. So what message is that referring to the body schooling system? Do you see do you see that's it's a fascinating thing to think about, because we are overwhelmed with autoimmune disease. So there's really, I'm just throwing that one in there because we spoke about antibiotics quite a lot, but there's so many routes you could go down with this when you start to unpick it, of okay, what causes this inability to see self and non-self then. So what influence is it having within the structure of the physiology, and also energetically, spiritually, the spiritual self? Yeah. So when an autoimmune disease occurs, what has triggered that confusion in identification of the self within the body? What's caused it? What's caused the miscommunication? Are we looking at something that's prescription drug related? Are we looking at prescription drug interference with the communication? And the results are confusing. So they're confusing the ability of the body to then recognise. Are we looking at energetic impact? Are we looking at outer absorption? Are we looking at previous self-recognition? Is there too much past present? So this is where the past life people should be going, no, oh, yeah. And if you're not that past life person, you need to sign up, because when I started this course and I said everything overlaps and everything relates, but there's no way you can teach it in one thing, not unless you all pack your little suitcases and come and join the Ravenwood School and just be here for like 6 years. There's no way, but it's so overlaps. Where is the cellular soul overlap? Where is it? What's going on there? What happens there? Right, I'll leave you floating on that one, people. Okay, just leave it there. Right, chuck in a little bit of astrology. I will mention a couple of books if anyone wants a couple of books. Also, oh, just released the astrology course has just changed to astrological plant medicine has changed to be on an evening so that people can fit it in a little bit more easier, hopefully. Okay, right, top up time. Oh, right, astrology. Let's chuck a bit more in. Okay, so H.L. Cornell Medical Astrology book, really good book to get. I don't have a copy at the moment. I can't bloody find mine. Judith Hill Medical Astrology as well. Just wanted to throw those in there. Immunity. Immunity is ruled by Mars. Mars. War. You couldn't make it up, could you? War, protection, blood. Mars also rules fever, rules heat, rules inflammation. The bloodstream also ruled by Mars. Like an army fighting just like Mars. Yeah. Sun is a secondary as well. And of course, I like to see how that's related because Sun is also our vitality and our core vital energy. So our vitality drops and our immunity drops. It's our core immunity, comes from our core vitality. We see how this all links together to the point that you just go, whoa. Okay, that's enough astrology. Right, no, okay, we'll do a bit more. So the lymph has correspondence with the moon as well, with Pisces. We see the lymph immune connection. So we connect to Neptune or Jupiter in the fact that we see, when we see stagnation, yeah. On the polarity, just chucking this one in there, you've got Pisces, lymph, immune down here. You've got Virgo over there on that polarity, and you've got Virgo, intestines, gut, liver, which of course, what is it full of? What is it all full of down there? It's full of lymphatic tissue. Yeah, so you've got immunity over here and you've got lymphatic tissue over there. Yeah, polarity. Like I say, you really couldn't make it up. Right, now, okay, herbal actions. Okay, so herbal actions. Let's go through... let's go through some herbal actions. Right, okay. Diaphoretic. Right. Diaphoretic, something that is dispersing, it is draining moisture by pushing up and out of the surface. Yep. So main use in fever, understanding proper treatment of fever is vital. We'll go through that. Suppression of a fever is not so good. We want to support the body's innate reaction. So supporting the body's intelligence. Using a diaphoretic in a totally vitalist way of working with the body is always best. It's important to break down and differentiate the different types of diaphoretic, so as we have before, because they're all very different. So let's start with stimulant diaphoretic. So you're looking at hot, pungent, warming, increasing circulation. It's a stimulant diaphoretic, so it's moving up and out to the surface. It's driving heat from the core, increasing sweating by opening the pores and releasing, almost like opening the windows for ventilation. Yep. Typically used at the early stages of fever when someone feels cold. They might look pale, tired, sluggish. So the temperature at this point won't register as a fever. So the fever hasn't shown yet, but it's about to. Blood at the core is the hottest. So opening the capillary beds cools the blood. So short term, you'll feel hotter. Yep. Long term, you feel cooler. You're helping the body along by moving the process along. Yeah. Across the board, in varying degrees, these plants are warming to hot, but while they're initially warming, they become cooling. Yeah. So their action is to cool, even though that they're hot plants. Yep. Cool. They become cooling with the opening up. Yeah. Stimulant diaphoretic. So remember, you have the short or long-term effects of plant medicines. Just want to chuck this in here. So, and the local and so you've got the short and long-term effects of plant medicine, and you've got the local and constitutional effects of plant medicine. So local, yeah, and the effects on the constitution, short-term, long-term effects of plant medicine. You have to remember, you have to keep that, put that on a post-it note somewhere. What are my short and long-term effects? What are my local and constitutional effects? So you're looking at your net effects. When we go through our formula, like we did in session 11, and we looked at formula, at the end of the day, you're going through your net outcome, what you want your net outcome to be. But remember those, I like to break it down like that: short, long-term, local, constitutional. Okay, so for example, why am I banging on about this? Okay, because for example, eating hot and spicy food in a hot country opens up the pores and cools down. Yeah, you get where I'm going with that. So that is, you need to always be connecting with that long-term effects. So you might not think to give hot, pungent, warming, increasing circulation plants if someone's just about to go into a fever. However, just like eating hot foods in a hot country, it opens the pores, so eventually it's hot when you're eating it, but really hot, but it's actually cooling because it opens the pores, it cools. Yep. Just like eating ginger, having hot ginger in the winter, not so good actually, because it's ultimately, it's hot at the start, hot and warming, but it's going to cool you down. Yeah, so it's looking at that long term as well. So they're normally always circulatory stimulants, as well as often carminatives as well. So cayenne, very hot, can be overkill. So when you can get away with using a milder herb, then please use a milder herb. Ginger, more gentle. Yarrow, really important. You hear me bang on about it all the time. Polycrest plants, stimulant and relaxing, diaphoretic. Does it both. Right, thyme. Don't try to be fancy. Okay, don't try and just use something that no one's ever heard of, that you had to import from wherever. Thyme, don't overlook thyme. Thyme it's really, really important. For example, thyme, black pepper and ginger, either drink as a tea or as in a hot bath. Really, really good. Little triplet there. Clove as well. Don't overlook some of your standard plant, what I'd call standard plants. Thyme is fabulous. I want beds and beds and beds of it, and beds of yarrow. In fact, we're just going to become nettle and lemon balm and yarrow, and because go through your plants, go through your organ systems, and go through your materia medica. Get your books out, hit your books, go through your books, and you figure out what you've got growing, and you figure out what you need, and cross-reference everything so that you can figure out what you need and what you need to grow and what you need to plant. And you'll be amazed how you can just go to just a few plants. I mean, I started the course by saying 50. I changed my mind. I don't even think you need 50. There you go. I stand by that. Put my neck on the line with it. Right, okay. So, where was we talking about? We were talking about stimulant diaphoretic, and the opposite of which is relaxant diaphoretic. So this is often used, I should say, later in a fever when the heat has been raised. The muscles tighten, the headaches begin, the tension builds throughout the entire system. The vascular also constricts and blood flow to the surface is restricted. But it then makes it really hard for the fever to actually break, because the skin is red and hot and dry, but it's not sweaty because everything's constricted and tight, and there's actually, there's just too much pressure to actually break that fever. So relaxant diaphoretic in that case. Relaxant diaphoretics relax the tension in the capillary beds. They don't drive the blood. They work by relaxing the tension, relaxing that tension. That's how it moves. It's not a case of it's all tense, so just push it through. No, it's the relaxant of it, and then it flows, okay? So these plants will be acrid in taste. You're looking at elderflower, peppermint, yarrow. In fact, that's a classic trio. Lobelia as well. Always administer diaphoretics as a hot tea. If you only have tincture, then add it to hot water. Right. Antipyretic. So antipyretic suppresses a fever, not so much as prescription drugs suppress a fever, but they do shut down that fever process. So we'd be looking at willow bark, wintergreen, meadowsweet, organ grape. Whenever we see a plant that lowers a fever but doesn't stimulate sweating, it's going to be mildly suppressive. So we need to remember that. Generally, we don't want to follow these plants and use these plants, as it's not a vitalist approach to suppress, unless, and which is why I'm mentioning it at all, unless the fever has got to a dangerously high degree. I'll go through some figures in a minute. So unless you've got to a point where this is dangerously high, this fever is dangerously high, then you would use this. That's when you would use that. Right, immunostimulant. Any plant that directly enhances the core immunity. So use when you're acutely ill or on the onset of illness. Yep. Antimicrobial. There are constituents here that kill pathogens. So this is a broad selection of plants. Please do go research and document that. There's loads to look into in that category. Alternative plants, opening channels of cleansing. And let's not forget that if we're just thinking antimicrobial, we're not really thinking in a vitalist way. We're being a little bit allopathic about that. Immunotonic is to prevent illness, to support the neuroendocrine system and the immune system. In that category, all medicinal mushrooms very much prepare as a long decoction. I've not really worked with mushrooms, but they do fit into that category, very much so. Also ashwagandha, elderberry. Elderberry is also good for acute onset of infection as well. astragalus as well. So that's all. The immunotonic is to prevent illness. Don't give when seriously ill, to prevent illness and to support that onset of illness. Right, okay. Antiviral. Now, okay, so there's a few books. Oh, there's more than a few books. There's quite a lot of books and a lot of studies on antiviral qualities of plants and which plants are truly antiviral in their nature. Don't be allopathic about it. Look at the research and don't just Google it. Look at the research. Be thorough in how you look at your research, because was the research in vitro in a test tube or was it in the body? Because there is a big difference in research and... Oh man. Excuse me. Sorry. Somebody ring with me. We're not answering that. Okay, so there is a big difference in research and sometimes the conclusions are a bit of a leap. So it's quite controversial. So really, really look at your research and see where you sit with that. Don't just take it from a Google search that so-and-so is antiviral. Great. That's not researching, you know. Look at some good research. The constituents may prevent reproduction. So you might have a plant that prevents the reproduction, or you might have a plant that kills the viral pathogen. Where you want to know this. A lot of the research has been done, was done during the AIDS crisis, actually, with elderberry, osha, St John's wort, sage, lemon balm, propolis as well. So that there is a lot of research out there. Oh man, I can't actually answer this. Sorry about that. Right, okay, someone's very persistent. Antiparasitic. Right, these infections are generally from bad water. So usually from travelling. Some stay in the gut and some become systemic. If you have parasites, then you normally know about it. Things that we could use here, for example, wormwood. Okay, it's bitter, it's cold. In fact, anything from the Artemisia family. So you've got sweet anise, mugwort, clove also as well. Wormwood is your king there as well, mugwort as well. Organ grape, garlic, you get the idea. Alterative with a lymph affinity. So nice to include to keep the channels open and flowing while you're fighting stuff off. So for example, if we look at lymphagogue, stimulating the draining of the lymph, moving cellular debris, this is where you cross-reference your plants. So cross-reference your affinities. So things, for example, stimulating the immunity and then with an affinity for the respiratory system, you know, depending on what you're treating, this is where your cross-referencing really comes in, yeah? Echinacea, calendula, cleavers, redroot, burdock, bayberry, red clover. I'm just throwing out names, but you need to do your cross-referencing there, because like I was saying in session 11, and probably in 10 as well, you're going to get a plant that's going to cover a lot of bases, just like yarrow does. Yep, so do your cross-referencing with that. Expectorant, here you look at the respiratory, Materia medica, general formulas, then combine with immunoplants as well. And I think it's really important to note on that point that when we're looking at the immune system, because it is everywhere, it touches all parts, then this is when our cross-referencing of plant affinities is key. It's that key crossover to look. I'm not saying it's easy, it's not, but once you get into the habit of cross-referencing, and it's for you to build up your knowledge of your database on small amounts of cross-referent plants, and then you can get to really, really know very good plants that cross over and have this polycrest effect, and some that don't, they're specific as well, but you get to really understand a small amount that you can totally work with, and that's where your confidence comes up, you know. So it's a bit like learning to drive, and okay, so wow, so daunting, just learn to drive. Well, okay, it's like you driving round the block, driving into town over and over and over again, you know, and maybe you might go different routes into town, rather than someone saying, okay, you've just passed your tests, drive to Bristol. You know, it's like, don't. It's that practical of doing small cross-referencing, looking at what gets you from A to B, and what works with what affinity and what organ system, and that's where you will begin to gain a real amount of confidence when you start to build up your plants. Okay, so therapeutics. Therapeutics. Okay, here we go. So we're going to start with fever. So fever is not the enemy. Fever is an intelligent response. Okay, just so you know that. Fever, one of the most common symptoms that indicates the presence of pathogens. It also distinguishes the difference between flu and a cold. Okay, got that? Right. So 102 degrees to 104 degrees is considered a healthy functioning fever. Okay, 102 to 104. Metabolism increases, circulation, detoxification, production of white blood cells increase. The fever is initiated by the hypothalamus, we mentioned that before, which alters the set point of our internal temperature. And the set point is about 98 degrees-ish. Now, temperature fluctuates from person to person, and times of the day and times of the month and times of the year, so that's not set in stone. But what you've got there is the hypothalamus. It's like turning the radiator dial up. Yeah, it's turning up the fever is initiated by the communication by the immunocells to the hypothalamus, and then the hypothalamus alters the set point of the internal temperature. Right, okay. Stage 1, invasion of the pathogen. Yeah, equals the activated immunosystem, which sends out signals to the hypothalamus to raise the set point of our temperature. And let's say it's normally 98 degrees, but your set point is now raised to 102. Then you're going to feel cold, because your body is saying that 102 is the set temperature and your body is actually 98. This is why we feel cold. Yeah, the body sends blood to the core and the pores close. The hypothalamus activates the shivering response, producing friction to warm up. So first stages are called shivers. Okay. at this stage, if you want to help things along, have hot baths, use hot plants, blankets, anything to help the fever along, to help raise that temperature. Yeah? Okay. Stage 2. Important. Once your body reaches 99.9 degrees, the digestive system shuts down. Okay? This is why we say fast a fever, feed a cold. Because if you've got a temperature, nothing's going to get digested. Remember that. Probably actually going to just throw it up. Yeah. So, stage 2. Now you feel hot because you've reached 102 or whatever your new set temperature that the hypothalamus has set. So skin is often red, pores are still closed at this stage, blood is diverted to the periphery because the body is cooking the pathogen. Because don't forget that the immunocells, I can't remember which division they were, but they know what the pathogen's going to cook at. So they've already said that they've already told them. That's it, sent out. All that information has been sent to hypothalamus to set the temperature. So they are being cooked at that stage. The immune system now needs amino acids, which it strips from the muscles. Yeah, that sounds painful, and it is. It causes aches and it causes pains. Yep. It has to do that because digestion is shut down. So there's nowhere else to get it from. There's nowhere else to get the amino acids from. Here, the relaxant diaphoretic come into play. Because you start to sweat now, drink water. Avoid dehydration, also replacing minerals and electrolytes. Not hot baths nor cold baths, just tepid baths. Cold will just suppress the fever, yeah? And magnesium salts will also help with the aches and pains. Cool? Cool. Stage 3, yeah? The hypothalamus brings the set point back to 98, but you're still at 102. So now the fever is at breaking point because the hypothalamus has come back down to 98. We've cooked, yeah? And you're at breaking point and you are hot. And what needs to be remembered is that stage 2 and 3 can alter and they can go back and forth. Yeah. So this is why the response is it's such an intelligent response, because at that point there's a measurement going on with the immunity of what's been cooked and not cooked, and does it need to the hypothalamus go back up or down, so that we can go backwards and forwards from 2 to 3 there. So having a formula that is both a relaxant and a stimulant diaphoretic is ideal, and obviously continuing to starve that fever is also ideal at that breaking point. So stage 4, this is the recovery period, and it should be as long as the fever was, and that is really important because returning to normality with a raised stress response means the immunoresponse is reduced. So the likelihood of returning infection is increased massively. So people who the fever breaks and it's like the next day, say we've had I don't know, fever for, let's say it was 3 days, and then fever broke and the next day they got up and went to work. Now, not good, not good, not good. The rest period is as long, it should be as long as the fever was. So lingering infection, there could still be. So going back to a stress response, a normal response of work and you know, stress related response of stressful lives, normality, that is considerably, that's going to be insufficient rest time, which is going to mean that lingering infections are likely to reoccur and you just get sick again. Yeah, cool. We did fever. Woo. Okay, a few points. Flu dies at 99 degrees. 104 degrees kills a lot of pathogens, and 106 degrees is a dangerous temperature. So under 106 degrees impacts nervous system. Pneumonia dies at 106 degrees, which is why it's very difficult to treat pneumonia, because to get to cook at 106 also creates damage as well, which is why it's very serious. 108 and 110, basically you're looking at cells die and you're looking at brain damage at that temperature. So a few important degrees there. You're looking at fluid loss, electrolyte loss, really important for the weak, dry constitutions, children, the elderly. Very important to know those temperatures. Using drugs to suppress the fever increases the symptoms, and it also lengthens the infection. That's really important to know. And this applies to plants as well. If you're going to use plants in an allopathic way and suppress, it's going to lengthen the fever time. There was a popular study on rabbits. Sorry, I didn't do it. There was a popular study that you can probably look up the results of this on rabbits with pneumonia, where 28% of the rabbits died. But they gave them aspirin and 100% of the rabbits died. Now that says something. That says a lot. So while the symptoms go away with suppression, the pathogens are rapidly replicating and reproducing. It's all happening in the background. So that's important to know. Plants. I'm going to lose my voice. Plants for fevers. So stage 1, stage 2, you know, going in and out of these stages. Cayenne, circulatory stimulant, obviously not ideal for the very weak. Ginger, fresh, dried, fresh or dried is fine. Dried tends to be stronger. It's also antimicrobial is ginger aspects as well, and antiseptic as well. It can also be used in a tea or a bath, so it's really quite a good plant to use. It's not so harsh as that's cayenne. Also yarrow, obviously gonna stay yarrow. Good in a strong tincture. You can produce that from dried as well. There's no problem producing that from dried. The dried plant, if you can just keep some dried plants, get a tincture of that knocking around. Can be applied during any stage of fever. Is important to know about the yarrow. So it's cooling and yet it's increasing circulatory circulation as well. So it's a broad spectrum antimicrobial. Yarrow has that bitter quality as well. It's a stimulant, but it's also a relaxant. It acts as on a broad spectrum of organ systems, as we know, because we've been banging on about yarrow now for months. A classic formula that's a balanced diaphoretic, and this is an old one. And again, I'm going to say, if it's not broke, don't be trying to be fancy and fixing something that's not broke. So yarrow flower, which is a stimulant. You've got peppermint leaf, and then you've got a elderflower, which is a relaxant. So that's a nice balanced diaphoretic formula there. yarrow not only stimulates the function of the arterial, the blood, but also the venous uptake of the blood as well. So remember, with infection, the fluids become very toxic, the fluids become stagnant as well. So yarrow helps to clean and drain those fluids. So kind of yarrow is an absolute must here, guys. Also thyme. So thyme, great for damp, heavy, cold, respiratory, broad spectrum, antimicrobial, the steam is really, really good with the use with the mucosal membranes. It acts directly on the pathogen, even from steam. Remember that. In fact, all the aromatic oils in traditional smudging, so traditional things that we use with smudging, they all act upon the microbial airborne particles, these airborne particles, which are crucial to everyone else that's in the room. It's crucial to their immunity, which is, of course, why you would smudge with frankincense and myrrh and these volatile oil-rich plants. This is why all these, when you're in the shop and you're looking at smokes that we create, this is where they all came from. It all came from the origin of people coming together and everyone keeping the air cleansed and healthy. Yeah. So thyme is also good at the end of a fever to continue to cleanse the space as well. Garlic, best delivered in a broth, hot, circulates, thins the blood, super microbial action. Cloves, stimulant diaphoretic. Relaxant diaphoretics, bone sets, critical remedy for fever, cooling. It's also relaxing, stimulates digestion. The alternating chills and fever can override the liver. So when you're looking at fever and the chills going between the two processes that we were talking about, that can override the liver function and it can become stuck. So the bone set will reboot. It's a reboot for that liver. What to remember is it is very bitter and it can make you sick. So just be aware of how bitter it is. Its immuno-boost is better than echinacea as a tincture. In warm water is best because it is, I've not taken it, but it's supposed to be absolutely totally vile. So I can't comment on that, but it's proven that it's really good. I think it's illegal in some places, but I'm sure that's just some states of America or something. I don't really know. I'd have to look into it. Better still, you look into it, you tell me. Right, elderflower. Same for every species, just don't use the red elderberries variety. And I'd say we don't have that in this country, but we have all sorts imported into this country, so just be aware of that. I'm not sure on that variety, but it's the red elderberry. Just don't use the red elderberry. Although all of the varieties fine. Goes back to the Roman Empire. We know this. Rich in historical content. The flower is a different medicine to the berry. The flower is used as a relaxant diaphoretic. It disperses the blood up and out by opening the capillaries, opens it. Basically, if you just remember that it opens things up. Good for tension, irritability. So during the fever, when someone's really worked up and really everything's really tight and tense, it's good for that tension, that opening up of that tension. It's also good for kids as well. Lemon balm. Distinct nervine qualities as well with the lemon balm. We know that because we've done the nervous system. So Fever with anxiety, yeah, fever with a lot of stress, fever with a lot of lack of sleep. It's sedative to heat. It's also great for kids, so lemon balm, brilliant for that. Blue vervain, very bitter but nervine as well. Difficult as a tea, so probably use a tincture. It's a very relaxant, relaxes tension, good for fever and headaches, brings the vital force down. Also antispasmodic, taking away muscular pains and that tension that comes with that pain. So when we're looking at fever, it's vital to look at what else is going on. Now that's obvious. You didn't need me to tell you that, did you? It's not just a fever. What else is going on? Where's the fever? Where's it coming from? So you'd be looking at, is there a UTI? Is there a urinary tract infection? Is there a respiratory infection? So treat what else is going on as well. Don't tunnel vision on the woohoo fever, treating a fever. You know, it's not just, don't just tunnel vision on that. I don't need to tell you this. I know that you've got it covered. So we're looking at where it's coming from, and therefore when you formulate, make sure that you check your secondary actions. Yeah, so checking your secondary actions and your affinities as well, because what's the underlying thing that's going on behind that fever? Okay, right, we've done fever. Okay, so colds and flus. Right. Oh, my writing's got a little bit small and neat. That's not good. To remember, the cold is uncomfortable. The flu can kill you. Big difference, people. The only real similarity is that they're respiratory system focused. A virus needs a host. They dock into our cells and use our DNA to reproduce. You don't tend to get viral infections close to the core of the body. Viruses are sensitive to heat, which is why they induce a fever, because that is the response of the body to cook them. Yeah, but it's also why they tend to stay nearer to the periphery of the body, such as the respiratory system, because the core is hotter. Yeah. Water therapy, steam lodges, bathhouses, etc. They've all been a major part of natural therapy for a very long time, and rightly so. Typically, a respiratory viral infection is caught through inhalation, typically. Inhalation of microscopic globules, which are airborne. Traditionally, smudging with herbs, plants, frankincense clears the air. Burning volatile, I can't even say that, volatilizes these essential oil particles, these compounds. So burning them sends the compounds, it volatilizes them into the air, and it clears the air because they cling on and destroy. Yeah. So using frankincense in churches, etc., this is where it all comes from, back to ancient times. These compounds clear the air, they remove, and if you look at sages and you look at Native American tradition and removing bad spirits, well, what are viruses if they're not bad spirits? You see? One of the same. We have to be able to transcend this ancient wisdom and be able to incorporate it into our modern understanding, because it's all there in plain sight. Okay, so where was I? Traditional use of oils and plants to clear the atmosphere is vital. It's vital that we remember that. Flu is always accompanied with fever, always, and musculoskeletal pain. This is the main difference between flu and cold. Common cold typically stays localized to the respiratory system, nasal, sinus, throat, larynx, pharynx, etc. Symptoms should last 4 to 5 days unless they are suppressed, in which case they're going to last more, whereas the flu lasts a lot longer. The flu has a more of a systemic response. So again, cold is going to stay around the respiratory system. Flu is systemic in its response. The cold can be many pathogens. The flu is typically one virus with many variations. Okay, so colds typically display as cold, damp symptoms, whereas the flu can display as hot, dry symptoms, depending on the phase that it's in at the time. We get that right. If we think of our immunity, it's the T cells that are predominantly the attacking party of our immunity. This is why we see new strains of viruses and people get really ill, because their immune system hasn't seen that virus before, that strain before, yeah? This is why taking medicine to suppress makes you more sick, because the immune system can't actually learn because you've suppressed it. Yeah. Most flus are spread via pigs or birds. Yeah, who knew? This is where thieves oil comes in to its own. When you're in the area of possible infection, it's about as preventative as you can get, using it either topically, so as a essential oil, or using it by inhaling it as burning the actual herbs, so using it as it would have been. Herbs, the thieves oil blends. You want to know more about that, come ask us in the apothecary. So the thieves oil, the thieves blends of herbs, those blends of herbs that were actually traditionally used during the plague. So putting those actually onto charcoal and burning it, so you're volatilizing all of those oils and breathing that in, is one of the best ways to be protected in an infected space. Okay, right. Oh, my legs have gone to sleep, and there's no herb for that probably. Okay, echinacea, one of the primary herbs used in the modern world. We all know it. Hey Minnie, it doesn't really have a strong affinity with the respiratory system, but it is an immunostimulant, increasing production of B cells, T cells, antibodies. All the immunological components are increased through echinacea. Everyone thinks, get sick, take echinacea. And while it can be beneficial short term, there's definitely other plants we should also consider to combine with the echinacea. The way we use echinacea is kind of suppressive, and you've heard me say that before. The cold is often telling the body to slow down, and we just suppress that reaction. So yeah, we know this. The root is not as strong as the flower. It is stimulant to the lymphatic, the blood, and it's also cooling. Lots of people today use it as a loading dose, so small amounts, but often so constantly stimulating that immune system. Depends what state that immune system is in. That's not really a vitalist approach if you're exhausted and you just need to keep going and going and going and going. It's not how we should work. The traditional perspective of use is for deep infection of the blood. You know this, we've spoke about it. It was classified as a cleansing agent, an alterative, altering not specifically the immune system. It was used for really serious stuff, whereas now we use it for everything. Absolutely everything. And it's very much out of its traditional context compared to how it used to be. The flower as a tincture works with the lymphatic system well, moving up and out more so than the root, which works on a deeper level. They both display microbial actions, killing bacteria and increasing cell production in order to destroy pathogens. Also, the plant tricks the immune system by releasing polyunsaccharides, which the immune system sees as invasive, even though they're not. So it tricks the immune system it tricks it into that boost of immunity in that sense. It's a very clever plant. Typically use it for depressed tissue states, for toxic, sluggish tissue states. Now, this is something that I've been working on. I've been looking into quite a lot recently. There's a lot of stuff that's written quite recently about contraindictions for not using echinacea for autoimmune disease clients. Basically because what you're boosting that cell production. The theory is you're boosting the cell production, but the cells aren't clear on self and non-self. So I get that, but I do get that, but I'd like to know more about that personally. Try not to use it allopathically is a given to enable a toxic lifestyle. Chronic suppression of acute symptoms, don't forget, leads to chronic disease. That's what we started with. So think echinacea, think deep infection. You can use topically, you can also use internally. Yep, good. Elderberry, great treatment for viral infection. Elder disarms the enzyme of the virus to prevent it from reproducing or from replicating, yeah. So it's not killing it per se, but stopping reproduction. The taste of elderberry is sweet, which is nourishing, and it's sour as well, which is cooling to inflammation. It's also moistening, and studies have shown that complete curability of the flu with elderberry syrup can be achieved within 3 days. It's full of antioxidants. Elderberry syrup is classic traditional preparation. Classic. It deactivates the viral enzyme, strengthens the immune system. Take after after as well for recovery, for long-term immunorestorative as well. So it is okay to use long term, to continue to use. Tincture the berry or decoct them, but don't just go around eating them. It's best to, this is how you need to deliver it. Harvest dry, cook out as tea or a fresh decoction. Best one I've ever had is Samantha's best recipe. Perfect. You're gonna have to try and get that from her. Don't know if she's gonna give it over, but it's mighty good. Right, moving on to calendula. Often overlooked calendula, polycrest plant. We've spoken about calendula. So the taste is bitter. It's a good lymphagogue. It's got antiseptic properties, great internally, used for immunodeficiencies, immunorestorative as well. Dry extract is stronger for tincture. Good for lymph swelling, cleansing the lymphatics, the blood, moving the liver, increasing circulation, use for immuno weakness as well, with lymphatic swelling. Garlic, moving on to garlic, brilliant, but remember it's hot. Balsam root. Balsam root escaped from its native Himalayas and it's now found in England, Wales, mainly on the riverbanks, or on riverbanks, should I say. Great immunostimulant with a respiratory affinity even, rather than infinity. My notes are hilarious. I wonder I can actually speak at all. It's warming these volatile oils and resins, stimulating a cough and lifting away stuck mucus, warming, also direct antimicrobial actions as well, and resins that coat the throat. It's a good alternative to Osha, which is, I believe, an endangered plant. Balsam root grows like a corkscrew, so the plant, one plant can make a lot of tincture. That's worth knowing. Minnie, please come and sit down. Combine with elder and licorice as well to make a great moistening decoction. Everything from the respiratory module. So when we did the class on respiratory system, also everything from that, all the plants from that module actually apply here as well. Lymphatic swelling. This is an indication that we have an accumulation of metabolic waste products accumulating in the system. We spoke about this a little bit earlier. In this situation, the lymph is overloaded and it's unable to clear out the fluids. Bacteria, viruses can get into the lymph, and we can see infection in the lymphatic system. Again, it's easy for the lymph to become stagnant, congested, because it doesn't have its own pump, its own movement system. Remember, the best lymph movement is breathing and moving. Plants on this front, figwort, main use for scrofula, where the lymph is extremely swollen. Deep lymph stagnation, blood stagnation, skin condition, damp stagnation, tissue states. Figwort is a lymph formula, is quite good. It's good. Red root also is an astringent lymphagogue. Has an affinity with the spleen, so the swollen spleen, the swollen lymph nodes, yeah. Red root is drying. It's good for people who've been ill and can't quite recover as well. relaxed tissue states, that venous lymph, everything that gets congested and has stagnation, including the portal vein as well. So we see after illness the onset of this stagnation and this looseness, this relaxed, everything gets kind of exhausted and relaxed. And this is again when you cross-referencing of plants, because we've covered red root when we did the liver and the portal vein before, so you can see where your cross-reference comes in here. Also great for leaky gut, toning that relaxed pelvic stagnant area. Also good for blood, that in that it works well with the flow of it. So when we spoke about blood and we spoke about sticky blood or clogging, almost the electricity that passes along the sides as the blood moves through the channels, so that it's that electricity that increases that smooth flow, and red root is really good for that as well. Cleavers, good gentle lymphagogue. Mild, but it's effective. It's good for swollen, hard lymph nodes. It's moistening. Use cleavers fresh is better. Also red clover, good as a glandular remedy, specifically for hardened nodules, cysts, and these really congested areas, because it has this emollient property, so it softens. Also a great method is to volatilize. I have a real problem with that word today, don't I? Volatilize these medicines. So hang on, Minnie. There's a great methods of treatment, so remember that. So saunas, steam baths over bowls, breathing in essential oils, even in breathing in the steam from teas, the aroma from teas. These are topical applications for the respiratory. Drops of oils in the drops of oils on the floor in the shower as well. Can you wait, please? I'm nearly done. Wait a second. Use oils on a pillow or on a bed, along with smudges, and keeping the areas, but smudging with burning herbs, which are again high in oil content. Keeping the area as cleansed as possible, all really, really important. So guys, that was a really big section. Lots to learn here, lots to learn from a lot of our ancient stuff for our modern times. But I hope that I'm going to leave it there, because Minnie's pestering me and my phone is going just bonkers behind me as well. I'm going to leave it right there. Lots to learn from, and lots to think about on the immune system. So next up, not now, don't panic. Next up is endocrine. Okay, and that will be with you shortly. And good evening, everyone.